Hi, everyone. Welcome again. We're so glad, as always, that you're able to be with us, and especially this in this session 3 of 3 with Reginald Ryder. It's an understatement when I say what a pleasure it has been to spend the time with you, Reginald. We've really enjoyed it so much. It has really been exactly what we needed. To focus on the future of young people is like getting a booster shot of positivity and hope, or should I say vaccine. We 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 have talked about everything from receipt of your acceptance letter, the awesome adventure ahead, including taking individual responsibility, to self-advocacy, and so many things in between. We've appreciated your wisdom, your kindness, and your amazing sense of humor all along the way. But
Well,
I'm
thank
happy
you.
to say we are not done.
No, 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 no. We're clearly not. This is the 3 of 3, but this is a chapter in the book, and hopefully there are more chapters that we'll get a chance to write.
Yes, for sure. Okay, you ready to go?
I'm ready. Thank you.
Okay. So to get us started tonight, um, your chapter 8 in the book, and I just want to remind everybody we're talking about passing the baton with Reginald Ryder, and is titled Networking, and it's your go-to people. Okay, I feel like this is one of those chapters that should have about 10 exclamation points after it. I know what you mean, but I'm hoping that you wouldn't mind spending a little time telling our audience what you mean by networking, especially at this stage in their life.
Right. There's lots of ways to be able to describe it. One of the ways that I think I would say is that I heard it once said, it was on a TED Talk, so I can't take full credit for it, but it was basically the way that they paraphrase it, and I'm paraphrasing as well. It's telling what you know to who you know to someone else who knows, and then is interested in what you know. And so really, it's the art of networking is one of those things that I think is I won't say a lost art, but I think something that people don't necessarily take immediate advantage of or realize that it's really that important. I mean, even case in point, in my being able to to be here, even now, was because in conversation with a friend and colleague of mine, did they connect the 3 of us, and in the process of that, we had follow-up conversations. So their work was kind of done, and our work really began, and ultimately, it got us here to where I'm able to offer not only kernels of wisdom about the book, but my own journey in relationship to it. And so, to me, understanding that networking is very much a part of it is always being in a position and being ready, always being in a position and always having your wheels turn. I know that when I got ready to go to graduate school, at one point I mentioned kind of happenstance, so to speak, that I was interested in graduate school. Did an individual that was mentoring me at the time say, "Hey, I know someone who's looking for," and the rest is history. So it can be those. I think sometimes we take the formality of it, where you have to do it, in the way of a informational interview, and those things are definitely important, or something more formal in nature. But sometimes it's just through kind of casual conversations. I know for a fact for myself, I've sold more books kind of in the context of networking, just in saying what it was that I did, and even if they didn't have kids or students in college or whatever the case may be, the story at least was enough intriguing enough for them that they decided to to take the leap. And so I think networking has the ability to work like that, but I think it does require you to be prepared. It does require you to be able to offer the pitch or a pitch. Sometimes it's 30 seconds, sometimes it's 5 minutes, but there's something intriguing, I think, that everybody has within their story that draws people in. And I think in some respects you kind of have to figure that out, but at the same time be ready to do that. And I think one last thing is that I think for as much as we look for people to help us network, I think we also have to be able to network with others. because it's not always just a giving scenario. Sometimes you have to, put yourself in a position to be a receiver and a giver in either way.
Right. Now, I know we touched on this probably back in, I'm thinking session 1, but I'm wondering if you could elaborate on how students can use this in regards to their instructors and professors, and how they might do it and benefit from that experience.
Sure. So I know a lot of times, just sometimes even after class, you may talk to them or ask them a question or things of that sort. And if you're interested either in because it doesn't have to necessarily be your major, but if you're interested in, what the class is or the subject matter or even an aspect of the subject matter, sometimes that kind or level of conversation can kind of begin to get the wheels turning. The other thing I think you can do is that sometimes they may not necessarily know the person specifically or directly in regard to what's going on and what's happening, but they have friends and they have colleagues who do this or who do that. And so sometimes those things happen. I actually have an interesting story. One of my students from my community college class that I taught, we were talking about this very thing about informational interviews and career and trying to get yourself together and positioning yourself in all those ways. And lo and behold, the next week he went to his doctor. He had a medical exam, but his interest at the time was in was business with a medical bend to it. And so he literally had, while he was on the examining table, talking to his doctor about this whole experience, and lo and behold, before he knew it, because of this conversation that he and I had that in context with the class, did he end up getting an internship with that particular doctor to be able to see the business side of the medical profession. Wow. And came back to class the next day, and I was like, man, I could think that was the public service announcement that I would, kind of always be waiting on, but it was picture perfect. And so those are the kinds of things that can happen, when you clearly, position yourself and be ready for them.
Yeah, it really is taking advantage of every opportunity, right?
Exactly.
To create a circumstance of connection with people. And I think too, getting these students to actually show up at office hours is a type of networking too that really pushes. I know sometimes when I've worked with students, they've all, they think I don't need to go to office hours because
I got an A in the class.
I got an A in the class. It's like, that's not why you go to office hours.
No.
So it's interesting.
Exactly.
So reiteration of how important it is, just showing up, taking advantage of opportunities that are sitting there before you. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Speaking of networking, in a different area of networking is when you get to college and you are wanting to meet and know and greet and be part of circles, and so talk about creating your own circle. And you've got such a fantastic, long, beautiful list of considerations for people to think about when building their own circle, and let's talk a little bit about how you guide your clients on that vetting. You use that word vetting, and I like that word. So let's talk a little bit about how you guide them the vetting process for creating their own circle of people.
Right. So I think it's really important that you really have a sense of self. Going to college and, the new, whatever number 1,000 of people that there are, I think you still have to kind of hold true to some core values that you have, or that you either that you have and are in place, or that you want to instill. Because again, college, I think, is very much a chance or an opportunity to really brand or even rebrand yourself in one respect or another. So I think if you didn't have that in the experience or the exposure of where you were in high school or even going to your community college, the environment itself creates such a stage for you to be able to do that. Things I think about are, what do you value? What do you hold as, important? What does truth look like for you? What do you value in a friendship? What do you value in, a partnership? Because not everybody has to be your friend, but at the same time, you want to know that there are people who you can kind of, I think in a good way, categorize. Some people, you can and don't want to hang with, and that's okay. That's not a bad thing. I think. At the same time, there are people who you do want to hang with, and I think you have to really give yourself the chance and opportunity to really be, what's the word, open and flexible, but aware. And when your spider senses kind of go off, so to speak, about the good, bad, or the indifferent, I think you have to act on it. I know that there have been a lot of times, and I'm sure we can all speak to this as well, where I've been in different environments where I probably had no business being. We talked about that about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So, once a mistake, as my father likes to say, once a mistake, twice a habit, and after that, it's just a pattern. So yeah, you can find yourself in a situation where you shouldn't be, and then, kind of figure out that, what that looks like, what that feels like, and be mindful of that from that point on. I think those are things that you have to kind of to know and learn. And really, the only way to do that is to be open to it, open to meeting lots of different kinds of people from all different kinds of walks of life. But then somewhere in the mix of that, you've got to draw a line in the sand and say, this is a line that I'm not willing to cross. This is a line that I can't cross because there's too much at stake, or this is a line that I have to even take a step over because it's a stretch for me. But the stretch is going to mean that I'm going to grow and I'm going to develop and I'm going to find that something that I'm looking for.
Yeah. Just ahead of your beautiful list, number one on the list was, do you know who you are? But just ahead of that, I'd like to dive into a little bit of your mantra that you give people. It is true that you could say yes or no to anything that comes before you. So expand on that a little bit.
This is hard because I think there are times when it's easy to follow the crowd and just kind of take that bandwagon mentality on. And I think there are times when you do take a stand and you either say yes or no, that you're considered, seemingly the odd man out or odd person out. Maybe I'll say it that way even better. It's hard because I think we all want to identify. We all want to be a part of a group. We all want that something that we're in to represent us. But it really should represent you in all the ways that are fascinating, that you'll learn, that you'll develop, that you'll kind of grow and evolve and shape or reshape your thinking. Because that's the other thing too. I think people lose sight of the fact that going to college is kind of an instant mean. You go to get a degree and everything else. There are so many people that you meet and so many schools of thought that you have from people from different walks of life that I don't necessarily have to agree with you to disagree, but I also need to be able to put myself in a position where I'm in control of that, that aspect of my world and my life. Students, for example, not to bash or beat up anything or anybody, but students invariably, tend to gravitate immediately towards fraternities and sororities. And again, nothing wrong with them at all. I think they have their place, they have their fit within the context of that. But are they really speaking to the, to the values that you have? Are they really speaking to you understanding what your why is and and in you knowing what your why is, how they or how it is going to bring you, full circle with that particular process and that particular aspect of life in one respect or another. Typically it does. I hope in some respects that it always does, but it doesn't mean that it has to. It's not a fail-proof process or system. It is trial and error. But again, much like I think Maya Angelou said this before, it said, if someone shows you who they are, believe them.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's really, really important to keep in mind, because as a 17 or 18-year-old, going to school and kind of doing things on your own, you are really figuring or attempting to figure it out. But the moment someone, shows you, that piece of that aspect of who they are character-wise, if it doesn't match, it's okay. It's okay. It doesn't have to match, but you should be continuing to vet and continuing to find your space and your spot.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. I just love that idea that we should instill in all of our children, bringing them up, that there are always choices, and on the other side of choices are consequences. They can
Very
be
much
positive,
so.
negative,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, my kids have heard me
So-
say that ad nauseum, but it's so true. It really is.
Yeah. And then one day they'll actually believe you. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I'm working with individuals, I always, if they're struggling with something, you always have to go to their core values, right? If
Right.
something's not clear, things aren't feeling right, decision making is difficult, all the things you just said, Reginald, it's like your values have got to match up with all of that. And if it doesn't, then things are going to be all unsettled in your life. Yeah, for
And
sure.
I think parents do a good job of the wiring, so to speak, because I think the wiring is there.
Mhm.
I think it's important for us to be mindful that sometimes we need to change the light bulb or help change the light bulb, or at least let them know the light bulb's out.
That's for sure.
oh gosh.
You use a metaphor in your book, referring to ladder holders. Could you talk to us about that?
Sure. So I wish I could say that I coined the phrase myself, but my pastor actually gave us this, and he talks about it in a spiritual sense. But literally, what it means in the way of leadership is you as a leader, or you as a person in the context or process of being a leader, have or should have people around you or surrounding you who have and share your core values. So pretty much what we've been talking about the last few minutes. But in doing so, you should be looking to put yourself in a position to where, as you reach a goal, which is basically equivalent to a rung or an accomplishment in one respect or another, that the people who are down below, who are there as a support, not just to the ladder, but to you in every sense of the word, as you move through the process, you shouldn't have to worry about, is there someone at the ladder? Is there someone holding it to make sure that I don't fall off? So that you can continue to, kind of climb and aspire and be all the things that you're looking to be. One of the things that kind of comes to mind to think about is that, especially with the ladder and being outside and that kind of thing, the wind has an ability to kind of shift at times. And so I don't want to, as a leader or someone who's on my ladder, worry about things that I can't control. I want to be able to control my steps as I move forward. I don't have to worry about where my base is, or if I have a foundation, or who's there making sure my foundation doesn't crack or bend in one respect or another. So if I've got to call down to someone and say, hey, the ladder's moving, you minimally should be saying to me, hopefully, it's okay, I've got it. Or sorry, I'm back, I'm here, but never without a response. Because to me, then it tells me that I'm on my own. And again, we talk about being on your own but not alone. That's, to me, is where those two things I think fit perfectly. You are climbing the ladder on your own, because it is only one person on a ladder at a time. But you should surround yourself with people who are around you, who are going to help you do this, on your own.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And it kind of a full circle back to what we started the conversation with regarding our networking and stuff. And I mean, in life, we hopefully we start off with a good base and foundation and support. And then through life, we continue to add to it. And sometimes we're starting from scratch, but yeah, the work you put in is worth the effort. Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, something that you just said is going to take me on a little bit of a bird walk here. So, and then I'll get back to my next question. With regard to ladder holders and your circle and your vetting people, how do you help students understand that it's okay to let some people go? Sometimes we have to let certain individuals go from our life or from our circle if they're not I don't want to say serving us, but something's just not right. Like
Sure.
how can you gracefully let those people go and not keep a hold of them?
And I've heard it put this way: if someone's not pouring into your life, and it's been 6 weeks, 6 months, you set the time barometer of whatever sort that it is. It may mean that you let them go, and sometimes fortunately it's kind of osmosis, where the things just kind of dissipate, and they don't really happen. They're not happening anymore. You're not seeing them because you're in different classes. You're moved to a different dorm, or your class schedule is different, or you're in different activities. So sometimes those things kind of allow people to kind of fade away in that regard. At the same time, sometimes you're confronted with it. And again, I think I harken back to the fact that you need to have the backbone and the words sometimes to be able to say to someone that, listen, this isn't working for me, and this is the reason why. And you may not have meant for this to happen, or it may not have been what you intended, but your intent and your impact, didn't change my outcome. So if you by mistake hit my finger with a hammer, I'm not going to care whether or not you tried to hit the nail. You missed. You clearly hit me. It still hurts.
Oh.
And so it doesn't matter what that really doesn't matter what that looks like or what that feels like. But I need you to understand, A, B, and C about me, or that you did X, Y, and Z. And so, it doesn't work.
That's they call sometimes I've been reading a book called Crucial Conversations, and where you have to have the words, as you just said. Sometimes that's hard. So, okay, back to my track. Chapter 9 is all about self-awareness. We've talked a little bit about this already, and be self-aware, and that there's a line in the sand. And that, as we already spoke, talks about, this involves knowing who you are. But let's take just a moment here to talk about the more positive lines in the sand that we can draw for ourselves with regard to self-care and mentoring, and that going for higher needs is a term that you use.
Right. I think it's one of the kind of undervalued, underserved kind of aspects of life. I think because we're always living it, but we're always, after the something. And sometimes you kind of have to take a step back. I hearken to even our conversation that we had before we came on, where you talked about, walking the beach. Now, I love personally walking the beach as well, and I live, too far away from one, so I'm kind of vicariously living through you. But all things considered, there's something about that sound in my head when I hear it, or even when I think about it, or even when I, use an app on the phone where I hear the beach, or I hear something that sounds like it, that, gives me a peace and a serenity that, kind of doesn't compare to anything else. But what it means for me, though, is that, as Maslow's hierarchy of needs says, basically you take care of the basic needs, shelter, safety, food, all those things, you're able to meet and match and surpass even some of your higher needs. And higher needs would be things like learning. Higher needs would be things like, relationships and, those flourishing in our lives in all those types of ways. It's important for as much as you get involved in when you're in college, and as much as you do while you're there on a daily basis, between your classes, between work, between all the other things, you just got to have a moment. You got to decompress. You got to take the time to really decompress. I know that when I was writing this book, that there were times when it was really a point for me was that for as much as I wanted to write this book and really, put it out there because I felt like it was something that needed to be said and be offered, there were days where I needed to take, or times when I needed to take days off from it so that I could see it from a different vantage point, could see it from a different perspective. And as hard as it was for me to, turn on my computer and look at something on the internet, it was always there, calling my name or seemingly calling my name. But I say all that to say, a little willpower, a little mind focus and shaping will help in that regard. But, we really have to decompress. And I know for students, this device, device that everybody, has, and, they're so, tied to it. I think it's like super glue and Velcro kind of all in one in some respects to them, but it really is important to do so. I have my students in my community college class, and even sometimes that I coach, I'll ask them, I'll say, what is go to your phone, so go to your settings, tell me what your screen time looks like right now. I'll ask them, what does it look like? And I've heard things from, 4 hours a week, which still seems like a lot, to 8 hours a week. And I'll say, okay, take that time, cut it in half. That's either study time or some other time that you can now use in a different way, shape, form, or fashion. You can still take, if you have 7, you still take that 3.5 hours, use your phone the way you're using it, but you're going to be so much more productive. And so I think being able to find those ways and find those times, because a lot of times those students say to me, well, I don't know where all the time went. I can't figure out why I can't do and get X, Y, Z done. And I go to that invariably, and silence, but understanding what that looks like. So I just say, bottom line is to try and incorporate that list that you're speaking of, but that list into your either daily life, if not weekly life. And one day out of the week should be nobody's. Not your boyfriend, not your girlfriend, not your husband, not your wife, not your family, if you can help it, and with all due respect. But at the same time, even if it's a half day where you just, you go and walk the beach for 2 hours and you come back, I'm sure you'll be good and ready for a nap. That's another way of being able to kind of decompress. Maybe yours is Netflix. Maybe yours is cooking. Maybe it's guitar. Maybe it's tennis. Maybe it's, chats like this. But all the same, regardless, make sure you incorporate that into your life.
The secret of life.
Yeah, I love that idea of decompression. Diane would tell you I'm a master at it because I really need to have downtime, and I don't function well when I don't have it. So I always try and emphasize that too. So I appreciate it, because even when you think you don't need it, you really do need it. And
and I think as adults, we sometimes lose sight of that. And so even on my team that I work on, we talk about, it's like tomorrow is our highs and lows, and we'll do that as part of our, kind of what was great about the week, what was not so great about the week. But beyond that, we always ask each other, okay, what's your self-care focus for the weekend? And someone will say, well, I'm going to take, a bath bomb, and I'm going to do an Epsom salt bath, or I'm going to go and work out, or I'm going to cook because I know I need to for the week, and that's for me is a decompressing thing, or I'm going to binge Netflix and watch, whatever. It doesn't matter, just as long as you do it, and you just make sure that it becomes part of your, your ritual.
Right.
I love that. It has meaning when you say it out, more meaning when you say it out loud, and you're accountable for your colleagues.
Exactly. Exactly.
Awesome. Okay.
So this week, a meeting that Diane and I were at, Diane had shared a quote that she actually heard from someone else. And so, and now I'm using it. So see, you just never know when words are going to circle back around. But it said, this person said, I'm always ready to make a mistake I can learn from. And shouldn't we all look at mistakes that way, right? But this reminded me, Reginald, of your Odyssey. I know we aren't talking about an epic Greek poem, right?
But not quite, not this time.
And I think that there might be some similar characteristics. Do you want to talk about Reginald's Odyssey?
Sure. Wow, it's funny because over the last couple of days, I went back and kind of read what I wrote, and as I think about it, I'm like, wow, did you really do that? Was that something that you did? But it's my story. I'm sticking to it, and it's in print now, so I can never refute it.
That's right.
In that regard. But so really, I guess it started for me in the context with the book, but even before the book, or at least that portion of it, was that, I was a kid that was able to fly underneath the radar. I was a kid who didn't cause trouble. I wasn't a kid who, was, superlative, nor was I, in the dumps. I was somewhere in between and, able to kind of fly in my lane. The summer and the fall of my freshman year really opened my eyes to what I didn't realize until I got there. I didn't have and didn't, I possessed, but I didn't have, and I didn't really use to the fullest extent. And so after all the banter, after my futile attempts to meet all 18,000 students and kind of everything else in between, did I realize that I was really there to go to school and to go and get something out of it in the way and the manner that I needed to. And so my freshman year was, pretty much trying to find and figure out, much we talked about that networking, what my network looked like. And I can honestly say, other than my sister and maybe a couple of friends otherwise, that was pretty much it. But in the meantime, I, made my attempt to try and find my way and do my things that I, kind of grew accustomed to doing. But it wasn't until I actually broke a bone in my foot playing basketball did it really resonate with me, and I realized that I was capable of so much more. And so that third term of my freshman year was a kind of a turnaround point where the light bulb, my parents and the wiring that I talked about before, they didn't change my light bulb, but they gave me the wherewithal to know that my light bulb needed changing in one respect or another. And so I was able to make that happen. But I came back from my sophomore year thinking pretty diligently about what that was going to look like. Now, my freshman year before, I'd become a part of student activities, and I, by kind of default, after coming home a weekend, some students nominated me to be the floor rep for my floor. And I was like, well, what does that mean? It's kind of like student council in that respect. But what ended up happening was that my freshman year, I kind of evolved into running a running mate, if you will, with someone who's going to be president. And I said, okay, well, I'll be your vice president, and we get along fine. And I thought, great, this is going to work out fine. I'll be involved, but I won't be the person in charge, and I'll just kind of, again, float. Well, lo and behold, unfortunately, she had a situation where her father became ill, and she needed to stay home, and she couldn't come back. And so by default, that meant that I was
Wow.
I was president. I was like, oh gosh.
So much for floating.
Yeah, so much for floating.
Wow.
So now I needed to,
Wow.
kind of spread my wings and fly. And so, after someone kind of talking me off the ledge, at least a few times, did I, kind of take on this new role, new responsibility. But what it really led to was a couple things. Was one, me being very diligent with my time because I had to, because of all the responsibilities. I had a dorm meeting, and then we had an executive meeting, and then kind of others, and then activities that may be happening within the context of that. So there was that whole time management piece going on. But at the same time, it also meant that, I got the chance to get involved in circles that I didn't necessarily realize that I would get involved in. So the whole networking thing came to play. So we had these meetings where we as executive leaders would meet with various members of the cabinet at the university. So the president, provost, executive vice president for student affairs, residential life, the list goes on and on. And so, in that context, I learned how to use, a salad knife versus, the entree knife or entree fork, as well as, having conversations with people that I didn't know, but that were obviously very influential in context. And at the same time, learn how to study so that I could keep my grades, maintain a GPA that would allow me to continue to do these activities and, have something to show for it. So I got my first 3.0 in my fall of my sophomore year.
Mm.
And you would have thought it was a 4.0 or a 6.0 out of 4 for me, because it was just the thing I'd never done before. So but now it's like, now that you've done it, it's like, okay, now you got to, try and keep that up. So
Right.
that kind of carried through my into my sophomore year. At the end of my sophomore year, one of my friends told me about being a resident assistant. And he said, I'm going to do it. He said, they're going to pay for they're going to pay for, boarding for students. And I was like, really? So I didn't come there on an academic scholarship, but I was like, wow, this could kind of replace or kind of be like an academic scholarship because, it takes away some of the freight from my mom and dad.
Mhm.
And so I went through a little 6 weeks training that they did. I interviewed for it, and then they said, yes, you got it. It's like, great. So I came back that junior year with a little bit more on my plate, an RA, which meant, kind of duty 24/7 in that regard, if you remember what that was kind of like, if you did it or were observers of it. A fuller load and in my major at that point. And so it clearly really, really, really meant that I needed to do even more to make sure that I was organized, structured, prioritized, and managing my time so that I was in time, on time, every time, except when I had a time, and hopefully better time.
Yeah.
And it all, kind of came together and happened in that way and in that regard. And so I was happy with that. There were a couple of times when we talk about mistakes. So I make this sound like this is glossy and I just did everything right. Well, no, I didn't. I had a environmental law class as a political science major. That was what I was. And the day of the midterm and the day of the final, the night before, I was on duty. And every time the wheels came off.
Oh no.
So the work was, the studying itself was already hard because it was just hard material just to conceptualize. It was about the Superfund and that stuff, if you remember that from way back. And it was just hard to conceptualize, hard to keep track of all the dates, all the legislation, all the to-dos. Long and short, I didn't do well in the first exam, and I thought, okay, I'm under the gun to really do well this last time. And it was right before Christmas, and the hooligans came out in full force. And so I was up till like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I didn't really study all that well. And I got unfortunately, my only D on my transcript. I'm mad about it, but it's partly my fault because I didn't take the time to learn the material the way that I needed to. I didn't reach out for help in all the ways that I needed to. I didn't get a study buddy to study with because I didn't really know anybody. And at that point, I was, dumb in what I didn't know. And I'm honest, it's fair in saying that, but not smart in trying to reach out for the resources in that regard. But neither here nor there, I moved forward with the rest. I got to my senior year, and it was my senior year. I was happy you're here, senior year, and you think kind of harken back a little bit to what high school's like. But it really hit me that I was about to move on and embark to another portion of my life when I got ready to take my senior pictures. And I remember reaching in my closet to pull in the door. I can still see it was the left side of the closet. Pushed the little sliding door, reached to my suit, and I thought, you're not going to be doing this again next year. And it really just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, I need to make sure that I'm on point. I do everything I need to do. I went and took my portrait, and I went to see my advisor probably 2 or 3 weeks later. And his name was Mr. Mendenhall, God rest his soul. But he told me, I went to him and I said, so, I'm, full of myself at this point. And I said, so, what can a guy do with the political science degree that's, got, the things that I've done and da, 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 da. And he said, he looked at me with this very straightforward, deadpan face and said, I don't know. And my mouth, just like my mouth did then, I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, hands on my hips saying, why don't you know what a political scientists do? You're the advisor. You're supposed to know these things and be able to tell me. And then it dawned on me. It was like, no, that's not his job to tell you what to do with the rest of your life. It's your job to kind of figure out. So my Odyssey, in some respects, kind of really started from there at my fall term of my my senior year, and figuring out what that was going to look like. And so I, through kind of trial and error and getting involved in some other student activities or what have you, one of my friends had come to me and said, hey, we need some volunteers to go on this yield trip for admissions to see if you can help, recruit students or, get students excited about coming to the school. So we need somebody to go. Do you want to go? He's one of my buddies. And I said, sure, I'll go. And so I went. We got to dress up, and we got to wear the Ball State stuff and everything else. And before I knew it, they were, kids were coming to ask me questions, and parents were, and I was telling them my own experience about being an RA and being a Black Student Association and being a president of the residence hall I lived in, and all the other things that I was doing. And it became just much like it is right now, pretty conversational with respect to just being able to kind of tell people what my experience was like, and they bought into it, liked it, and we moved forward. A couple of the administrators who were in admissions saw me and said, kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, would you be interested in doing something like this? And I thought, I wasn't really sure, because actually in the fall of my senior year, someone had asked me about being in college student personnel and administration. And at the time, my tunnel vision, my 21-year-old naive self said, I don't want to be a hall director. Now, there's clearly nothing wrong with being a hall director, but in my head, that was the scope and vision that I had, was because someone in that context was asking me that very thing. So I didn't want to make that same mistake again. So, because I made that mistake the first time, I was at least open to hearing what it was that they said that, a job like that would entail and what you do and the whole nine. Mm-hmm. So in doing so, they said, well, we have another trip coming up, would you like to come back? And so I said, sure, I would. And so a couple more people tapped me and they said, listen, you should really, consider doing something like this, because I think you'd be really good at it. All your, residence life experience, your knowledge about the institution,
Mm-hmm.
You're a pretty good ambassador in general. So, think about it. So I had my hall director help me with a resume, which I hadn't ever done before, at least at that point in my life. But I looked, when I compiled it, and thought, wow, I've really done a lot of stuff. And I hadn't really kind of conceptualized the fact that what I had done on paper. I was one of 60 people that applied for the position, and I got it. And so I got the job in July. I was still taking a summer class, and I was an RA for a residence hall to pay for my boarding while I took this final class that I needed to take. It was an internship and a PE class, I think, is what I had to do that was left. And so I basically graduated, basically had a job before I graduated, and then I actually graduated in August of 87 was when I graduated. And so I started working in the admissions office and helping students and talking to parents, and was a part of the orientation crew. So I would go to dinner and talk to parents about this, and they were kind of latching on to every word that I was saying. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize that this was going to be like this, but it was I say fun, but it was a job at the same time. I know that now, looking back on it, that it was something that was within the context of my passion. So it was fun, but I was getting paid to do it.
Mm-hmm. Super. That title of Passion Found is just, wish everybody could feel that.
Yes.
So while you finish that up, though, I want to hear about a couple of the special people that helped you through that Odyssey and on to your Passion Found.
Yes. One specifically was, I went to a leadership conference, it was probably my second year of the position that I was at Allegheny College. And I took some students to a leadership conference, and the coordinator of her name was Dr. Carol Hardy. She's from the College of William and Mary. Great school, but she was their multicultural affairs director. And so she and I kind of befriended each other. She said, I got this leadership conference I really want you to come to, bring students, the whole nine. I said, great. So the Reverend Al Sharpton, amongst other speakers, was there, and he talked about leadership, and he talked about taking care of leaders doing a good job of taking care of other people. He said, but who really takes care of leaders? And that in itself is kind of a vein that I hadn't thought about in the context of leadership. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. It's like, wow, who does take care of other leaders? And in some respects, it is other people who are also leaders or mentors. And so it relates back to the whole thing we talked about at the very beginning about your network. But it also meant that I needed to be that person as well. So in a similar fashion to what my academic advisor said to me when he said, I don't know, and I needed to go find that answer, I needed to do the very same thing, and fast forward a few years later. So I met I saw my mentor there, and I said, listen, Reverend Sharpton said to me, hit me like a ton of bricks, and I really feel like I need to go to graduate school. And no more than I said that, this whole networking thing came back to play again. She said, I know someone looking for students right now who would basically, pay for your tuition, waive your out-of-state fees, give you a stipend, create a graduate assistantship for you. You're done in 2 years, 4 semesters, and that's it. I thought, wow. So I said, well, who is it? So introduce me. So I went and met him. His name is Byron Bullock. If he happens to hear this or read this, thank you very much. A dear friend, all the same. But he looked at I had a resume ready, and he said, listen, do you have a resume? I said, yes, I do. He pulled it out and he said, this shouldn't be any problem. Long and short, I had a 72-hour window to turn around my application for graduate school because there was a major snowstorm that particular week or two prior to the deadline. So recommendations, application, essay, the whole night. I had to pull us together. I did. It worked out, and I went to graduate school. So that's one of the people. So my grad advisor, Byron Bullock, Reverend Al Sharpton as a speaker. And then I have to give a lot of credit to my wife, because my wife at the time, my girlfriend, was, we were together at that point, and I was running stir crazy and buck wild in my head with what this was going to look like, because I knew I needed to maintain a 3.0 in college in order to be able to say. I knew factually I had only had up to a 2.8 for my total experience, but but 3 O's on occasion within the context of my academic career. So I'm scared frantic. I've quit my job. I've pulled up stakes. It's sink or swim, cold turkey, just go to it. So I was kind of running myself ragged and frantic. And she, amongst my friends, settled me down and said, listen, just take this a day at a time. It's important as much as it is the product at the end with the master's degree. It's the process you got to go through. And so all those self-care tips and all those things that I had touted come from me learning that in that context. So between basketball Monday, Wednesday, Fridays from 12 to 1:30 to taking time out to spend time with her, to then being able to do my academics the way that I did it, I finished my degree. I had a great job coming out of it, and ironically enough, my wife and I eloped, and we've been together for we eloped. And we've been together for, this is 25th will be in May of 2021. So I think I made the right decision, and thankfully she made a good decision too. So we've all made it work out from there. But
that's awesome.
That's my story. I'm sticking to it. So clearly a lot of successes and failures along the way, but I'm here to talk about it and have something to show for it.
Yeah. Well,
very nice.
We got a couple more things where that we'd like to get to before we wrap up today. And one of those being that, Reginald, a lot of people, a lot of individuals suffer from imposter syndrome. And I'm wondering if, it's a lot of us, I know I have my experiences with it too. And some people don't quite understand what that is and how it can impact you when you're trying to go to next steps or trying to achieve or acquire something.
Exactly. So imposter syndrome is basically that, you are in a position where you're, in a new role or a new position or a new walk of life in one respect or another. And clearly what you've done up to that point and before has been, either deemed by others or known to many that, allows you to be qualified and allows you to be able to do the job, the task, the process in one respect or another. But because it is new, but because it is different, because it is kind of the unknown, I think that level of doubt kind of creeps in one respect or another. And so I think I'm coining it right. someone said and I think I quoted in the book, that when you doubt your power, you give power to your doubt. And so for me, that happened not often enough, but it happened enough for me. So it did when I first went to graduate school, because I'd never had a 3.0 and maintained a 3.0. But when I finished, I ended with like a 3.5 or a 3.6. So clearly I was capable of doing so, but I didn't know that until I actually went through the process.
Right.
The same was true when I went to Cornell University, and I thought, these kids are valedictorians, these kids are answer keys, these are the kids who, everybody, looks up to in one respect or another. What could I possibly teach them that they don't already know or can't read from a book? Was the question I had in my head at the time. But what I came to realize was that I was 30, they were 17. I had 13 more years and then some, life experience, the good, bad, the other, and the ugly, successes and failures, mistakes and milestones, all the same, and was able to point to them some of the same frailties that I saw, or that I either saw in myself or saw in other students, so that, again, that they would make some of the same mistakes that we talked about. So it does take, it takes a strong mind and an ability to really kind of wipe the slate clean and erase the tape or erase the whiteboard or whatever medium you're using that allows you to be able to write or say to yourself that you're not capable, you're not ready. Sometimes you just have to put yourself in a position to do so, and it gets you ready. And then, all those qualities, all those skills, all those talents, come to life, and, you're then able to operate within your gift.
Yay.
Ooh-wee. That leads us right into each of our questions. You've guided us even into the questioning of this conversation. So winding down our conversation today, and I was awestruck by the fact that your last lesson in the book is passing the baton and how you related it to Oz, a very familiar story and tale for people young and old. So give us just a little bit of what your Oz is, because your book is so personal to you, yet so relatable to everyone else.
Yeah, and I think people know the story of Oz, but basically the wizard had the scarecrow, the Tin Man, the lion, and Dorothy, bring something back that showed that they were worthy of his time, and ultimately a gift that a token of a gift to get them what they wanted. And I actually had this conversation with someone who I actually saw just a couple of days ago, and I told them, I said, I want to thank you for that, because they actually planted the seed of what Oz really was and meant. And so I added it to the book as a late addition, but it obviously resonated. But the bottom line is that the talents or skills or the thing that they needed to bring back to the wizard, all four of them, were things that they possessed themselves that they didn't necessarily realize until they were put to the task or to the test to really bring it forth and bring it to life. And from where I sit, all the talents and all the skills and all the things that I've been granted and that have been God-given to me have been things that have been within me that others and situations pulled out and have now brought to bear and brought in a way that I've been able to capture and manifest them and use them in a way that allows me to be I think ultimately to be of service to others and to many. And so I think those skills and those things are in fact contained within each person. It's just really you being about the quest of getting from point A to point B and realizing through the product that the process is what's most important to get you to your Oz moment.
Mm-hmm. Reginald, you've always had it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. Sometimes I get away from myself.
That's my partner over there.
Yeah. So right behind me, you see those words, "Lead with love." That's
I do.
One of our signatures Touchstone, and we love to ask people that we've spent time with to give us their definition of leading with love.
And I do have it. I want to know if it's possible for me to share my screen with you. Is that possible?
I think you have
Absolutely.
authority to do that. Yeah.
I
Let me
hope so.
see. Let's see. Hold
Let's
on.
see. Let me.
Oh, I'm disabled. So if you
Okay,
will
there you got it.
enable me, then I'll show you something.
There you go. I think I just enabled you.
Perfect. Okay. So for me, leading with love really has everything to do with, and there's a story behind this. So the people to the left are my father's foreparents. They were Delianne and Daniel is their name. They were born slaves in, I think, the 1840s, if I'm not mistaken, in Virginia and South Carolina. The people to the right is a picture of my mom and dad and when they were younger and current day. And so I think as I think about leading with love, it's about understanding that my being here is not by happenstance, but my being here is by kind of all the stripes and all the struggles that many before me have had or that have brought to bear in one respect or another, a lot of which I'll never know and a lot of which I'll never understand. But, you know, fortunately, I've been given a platform, and this platform that I'm on right now allows me to be able to, I think, say and do a lot of things that they, you know, never had the chance or opportunity to do. And so to me, leading with love has everything to do with legacy, and not just how you got there, but what you ultimately leave for, you know, the next generation, my own kids, but ultimately kids and students that I work with throughout my time in doing what I'm doing right now. And it's sometimes even kind of hard to conceptualize for myself that this is where I am and this is what I'm doing, but I really feel like I'm operating in my gift, and I really feel like I'm you know, imparting as much wisdom and knowledge as I possibly can to those who will hear it.
Holy cow.
That was beautiful. Thank
Has
you.
been, and yeah, you got me going there.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
It's okay. I told you while we were off camera that I'm a crier, so you got me there. It happens.
You did. I
And you
didn't
used a
mean to
word
make you
that
cry,
none of
but
our guests. No,
what's that?
it's okay. I like crying sometimes. You've used a word there that none of our guests have yet, and that was legacy. And oh my goodness, what an important word to use in the context of leading with love. So as we wrap up, Emily and I, neither of us can thank you enough. It's been such a joy and a pleasure to get to know you, and like it or not, you're part of our circle now, and our hearts are full. And we just, again, want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And I know Emily wants to say that too, but for our audience, all this and more and lovely, great, good stuff coming in 2021 can be found at Touchstone Central Coast on Facebook and Instagram. And our website is always open at www.touchstonecc.com. And with that, Reginald,
Thank you, Reginald. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better platform. I couldn't have asked for better people, and I couldn't have asked for just everything about this has been fantastic. You have a fan on the East Coast, and I'll make sure if I can help it that everybody knows about who you are.